Walking Dead Season 5, Episode 2, you're here in the Theater of the Sun. The episode was entitled Strangers, and there's definitely a theme here. Whenever you consider what happened in the first episode last week with Carol rejoining the group along with Tyrese, after what happened with Carol and the group last season, which caused Rick to banish her, there's definitely a bit of a stranger mentality there. Kind of a attempt to potentially start over. And so we learn a little bit more about how this is going. And, well, quite frankly, it's going kind of skittishly. But one of the key parts of this episode, one of the key moments of this episode, is the fact that we've met a new character. We met Gabriel, who was a priest that was being attacked by a horde of walkers that the group decided to save, led by the insistence of Carl. Now, Gabriel seems to be just a priest that has never killed anybody or any walker, and immediately seems kind of like a fishy guy. However, he does have a church. So, at the insistence of other members of the group, Rick kind of concedes. They go to the church to find shelter, and then they're immediately kind of told to be on a run. There's a place where there is some food, and it's down at the local food bank, which this Gabriel did some work for, and so they had to go on a run, and it included Gabriel himself coming onto the run. Meanwhile, one thing that we also see near the beginning of this episode is Daryl and Carol kind of hovering together, and Daryl feeling like he's being watched. Now, at first, this doesn't seem like it has any imminent sort of meaning to the episode. And, in fact, whenever Gabriel is encountered by the group for the very first time, one of the very first questions that Rick asked him is whether or not he was watching them, to which he replied that he wasn't. So immediately there's kind of this unease. Who was the person that was watching the group? During the run, things don't exactly go swimmingly, considering they have to swim in a bunch of muck. And there's about a horde of roughly a dozen or so walkers, one of which nearly gets Bob, and one of which apparently scares the pants out of Gabriel and makes him very, very sad. Again, something that we didn't quite understand until the end of the episode, where it was clearly revealed that it was somebody from the church, an organist. Chances are also wife, considering we saw some scratchings on the side of the church that says, "You'll burn for this." So either this is a reference to the fact that perhaps he had a wife, or the fact that he kind of went against God in that, because he claims that he's sinned every day and gives it all to God, or based around some other transgressions that he has had. However, he encounters the zombie form of whoever this woman is in this photograph, and it clearly makes him very emotional. Daryl and Carol find a car on the side of the road, and Carol decides that it's kind of a good idea to keep that on the back burner and try to get that one started, just in case things happen to go poorly at the church. Now, after getting food and drink and everything, the group, minus Daryl and Carol, are kind of just enjoying themselves, where Seamus lookalike decides to propose once again Washington. Washington, of course, with the promises of a cure, which we get a little bit more of a better definition of, which is essentially like a hard reset button, trying to reset the entire world. And, well, instead of being just a survivor, they could be somebody that's building a better world for people such as Judith, the youth, and for themselves, and for the other people who are out there just trying to survive. Near the end of the episode, we see Bob, who seems a bit disheveled. Bob goes outside and is promptly attacked. And Gareth is still alive. You remember Gareth from last episode, from Terminus? Yeah, they eat people, in case you didn't catch last week's episode of this show. They eat people, because they're eating Bob. They're eating Bob, and that's where we close. With Bob being, well, systematically devoured while still being alive. So, who did we learn the most about today? Once again, we learned a little bit about Carol. We learned a lot about Gabriel, although there's still plenty of questions. We learned that Gareth is just kind of the worst Hannibal Lecter wannabe in history. But I think who we learned a lot about is Carl in this episode. We learned that Carl still trusts a little bit, and we learn that he's also somebody who's starting to starting to understand that he and his father may not always see eye to eye whenever it comes to certain situations and certain, decisions. However, there's an element of trust between the two of them that together they'll be able to, work through it. I think we also learned a lot about who I like to call Seamus lookalike. We learned that he's definitely brash about getting to Washington. And he's definitely one that is willing to do whatever it takes. But he's also one that is willing to accept the fact that our group of survivors here are exactly that. They are a tough unit. They are a tough force. They're ones that are able to make difficult decisions and escape. So we learned a lot about him. All in all, this episode was fairly solid. This is one that definitely cranked up more after you got past the first 20 or so minutes. The last half an hour of this episode was very suspenseful, and you learned a lot. I would give this one probably the grade of about a B. All in all, there were some moments that felt a little predictable. Like whenever Bob was in the church, whenever they were partying down, he definitely seemed disheveled, as though something was wrong. It wasn't predictable that he was about to get attacked, but you could definitely tell that something was about to go down. The foreboding was there. Although, quite frankly, I had the wrong guess of what it was. I thought that he had been bit whenever they went on the food run, so they got me there. But aside from that, a solid second episode that clearly kind of manifested from the thoughts that I had for the first episode, that Gareth and Terminus aren't exactly out of the woods yet, at least not that side of the chapter. And also the fact that there's still many, many questions that need to be answered about Gabriel. What is going on with Gabriel? Theories? Put them in the comments below. I'd like to hear them. Like, subscribe. Please, please, pass this channel along to all of your friends. Anybody who likes The Walking Dead. We're going to talk about these episodes each and every week right here on the Theater of the Sun. And I will see you next week.